Hello everyone, this is FDV vladerag here to bring you another episode of Learn to Play. Oh my gosh, did my mouse freeze again? You see, now this is the funny thing, this is actually take 3 for this episode. 3 times now my mouse is frozen so badly I haven't been able to continue, but let's persevere this time. So, Learn to Play, and if you're wondering what you're looking at, this is Heartless Swarm Unit Tester from the arcade. Allows you to pit units against another unit and see who wins. We will be using it for Learn to Play series number 3, That's Imba, where we're going to look at how do I beat units like the Colossus or Dark Templar or Ultralisks, Marauders, whatever it is that gives you trouble. I'm going to show you how to destroy it and make it look easy while doing it. So today we're going to start out by looking at everyone's least favorite air unit, the Void Ray. Well, okay, maybe it's not everyone's least favorite. I mean, the Mutalisk is pretty high up there too. But currently PvP has become a real hassle to deal with Void Rays. It used to be that you'd go with Blink Stalkers, you'd be able to use Archons, and, you know, the combination of the two would allow you to go ground and still deal with the Void Ray. These days, Stalkers are not enough. They just simply will not cut it. Anyway, also more than just that, something else has happened, which I find even more interesting. Vikings, back in Winds of Liberty, were the accepted counter to Void Rays. Nowadays,
it shall be done.
Well, see for yourself. Void Rays now absolutely destroy Vikings. Just completely annihilate them with prismatic alignment, and that is a huge difference. You could even see that when I add in two Vikings versus 1 Void Ray, prismatic alignment activates. They're going to do a lot. They're going to do a lot of damage, but they will not be able to take this out. 1 Void Ray is now not able to be countered by Vikings. So when we deal with Void Ray as Terran, we don't want to use Vikings. Now here's the thing. I'm going to clear this out quick and just bring back this 1 Void Ray, and we're going to examine a Void Ray. The key to beating any unit, and this is going to be fundamental in these Learn to Play vids for This is Imba. The key is to understand this unit. The Void Ray has some health. It's not actually the most strong unit. It is fairly fragile as a Protoss unit goes, not all that much different in strength than the Stalker. It is an armored and mechanical unit. It has no armor plating. Now this is really important. This means that low damage, high attack speed units like the Marine, like the Hydralisk, do very well against the Void Ray. Also things like carriers and whatever also do a lot of damage. Of course, no plasma shields. Now this is where it gets interesting. Void Rays do 6 damage, plus 4 versus armored, and prismatic alignment gives them another plus 6 versus armored units, meaning that they do 16 versus armored at a weapon speed of 0.5, meaning that any armored unit they will tear through. They will rip through Vikings, they will rip through Corruptors, they will rip through carriers, they will go through Tempests, other Void Rays, motherships, anything that has armor. So when we deal with the Void Ray as Terran, we do not want to use armored units. We want to use light units. Good way to deal with it, the easiest way of them all, is the Marine. You will notice that we are about even in cost here, and we will now engage.
Annihilation.
If I am correct, and I believe I am, this should be enough to kill the Void Ray. Notice I didn't even bother to activate Prismatic Alignment because it does nothing. Prismatic Alignment will not help in that situation, and so our Marines beat the Void Ray. One thing to keep in mind is that you can't actually micro against Void Rays. I'm going to show this again. The Void Rays attack, like for example, I'm attacking in, I'm not going to micro this back. Notice how it keeps focus? A Void Ray's range. Well, actually you can micro, I just showed it there, but that's not being controlled by a person who has the ability to micro against my micro. The Void Ray has a range of 6, but as you try to move away from the Void Ray, it will extend to up to 7 range, meaning that it's harder to get away from a Void Ray, especially because they can move while shooting, than it is to attack a Void Ray. Basically, you might as well just leave the unit there and keep fighting. So you want to use Marines. Also feasible, are ghosts. They can usually handle... where is delete? There should be a delete button, right? Redo? Recreate? No. Clear? Whatever. We'll just go with clear because I only had one void ray out. So clear. The other way to deal with, like, you can also use ghosts, for example. I only want one ghost. Can I just hit? No, I cannot. We will have to clear once more. Yeah, getting used to this. Ghosts are also fairly good against Ghosts are also fairly good against void rays. They have high health. And more importantly, when we engage, I'm just going to immediately go for the EMP and begin the shots. You will notice that the void ray is doing significant damage. I could have cloaked, perhaps. Of course, it doesn't have cloak research, but if cloak is researched, ghosts are a very powerful addition to a void ray composition because of that EMP. In general, they're just good against every Protoss unit, so you might want to consider adding a couple of ghosts into your composition. However, for the most part, you're going to want to use Marines with Stim to deal with void rays and not any of these other units for the most part. Ghosts are just too expensive, but they are an option because they are also, well, they're not a light unit, they are biological psionic, but they're not armored, so they don't take that extra damage. Anyway, that is how you deal with the void ray as a Terran, but now as a Zerg, we have to think. There's actually, Zerg is the best race to handle void rays. They have the most options, the most potential to do it. The one thing you want to remember is to avoid corruptors. Corruptors cannot beat a void ray. Just gonna send these two into attack. Charismatic alignment, corruption. You'll notice that it doesn't even matter. The void ray just melts through it. Even after it has been corrupted, taking that extra 20% damage means absolutely nothing to the void ray. It didn't even lose its shields. And that's one thing you have to remember. Corruptors do not work. Instead, you want to go for a light unit. Hydralisks are especially good. You will notice that this is currently less this is a less cost than the void ray, same supply, less gas, less minerals, and this should be enough to handle it. These are not upgraded in any way. I don't think they need to be. Notice how quickly this void ray is getting taken out. It will manage to kill one hydralisk, but it won't be enough. It will lose the void ray, and you have just traded at better than average cost, saving more than them. Also, the Hydralisk will continue to destroy other things on the ground, so it's a win-win. It's also faster to make Hydralisks than Void Rays because, well, any Protoss unit not made out of a warp gate takes forever to make. But now you don't have to go Hydralisk to beat a Void Ray. I'm not sure if 2 Mutalisks will be enough, but it should be. You'll notice that when I engage, I can now hold this down. You'll notice that they are not taking all that much damage. Going to micro this away, going to allow it to regenerate. Probably should just pull this back too. Keep them back. The thing about Mutalisks is you have this regeneration. We simply want to exploit that and continue to re-engage. But more importantly, they are light units, and they are faster to build. So if we just have, well, let's go with slightly more Mutalisks here. 3 Mutalisks to 1 Void Ray. These Mutalisks will win this battle. Just do a little bit of micro, because micro is good. And there you have it. Remember that micro is sort of important with Mutalisks, or rather it's important if you don't have armor. If you see that your opponent is going for a lot of Void Rays, get +1 air armor before +1 air attack. If you have that, especially if you have an upgrade advantage, you will easily be able to take out their Void Rays. It's not a problem at all. Also note, the scale of this is pretty important. An example, notice that it took 3 Mutalisks to defeat 1 Void Ray. This is 5 versus 2. Notice how they're actually being slightly more efficient at taking out the Void Rays because of the bounce. You will actually, as you have more Mutalisks, do better against Void Rays. So in large groups, Mutalisks do extremely well against Void Rays, and that is how you will want to deal with them. Now, early Void Rays can be handled the easiest of all. The Queen is almost enough, usually. It depends on upgrades to some extent, and other things, but quite often, this will be all you will need to take out a Void Ray. Or rather, the Queen's at your hatchery. You will need the other Queen as well, or a Spore Crawler, but notice that it's, a single Void Ray will not be enough to turn the tides of the battle. And the reason I also say that Zerg has the most option just to deal with this is because the Infestor is like the best anti-Void Ray unit ever. This literally is the best unit to deal with Void Rays. Do I even need to say anything about this? Do I even need to say anything about this? You lose nothing. So always remember, infested Terrans do fantastically. They are like regular Marines that we use to defeat the Void Ray at first, but free. Free is always good. We want free. Okay, now we're going to get to the really hard part. Protoss. We've already learned that we don't want to fight them with armored units. But so how do we win, right? We can't use Stalkers. In small groups, 3 Stalkers will beat 1 or 2 Void Rays. Well, no, 3 Stalkers can beat a Void Ray with 1 super damaged Stalker remaining, but it does not scale well. 30 Stalkers will not do well against 10 Void Rays. It just won't happen. Moreover, if you have a lot of Stalkers, they're not going to have just 10 Void Rays. Anyways, if you'll notice the cost, at this point, they actually are getting the better end of the deal. You are spending just as much to kill this Void Ray as you are getting out of it, except you have more supplies, so they could easily have, a Zealot here too, which would be enough to change the entire course of the battle. Therefore, Stalkers are not our best option to take out Void Rays. It's because they're armored, because they're fragile. You just don't want to go with Stalkers. They are not the most efficient way of doing it, which leaves us with what? How do we take out a Void Ray as Protoss? Carriers can work if you have a lot of carriers, but then again, a lot of carriers will work versus anything except, well, Tempest, because of their because the interceptors mess up micro, they mess with the AI. It's a very strong thing, and also mass carrier is not easy to get to, so that's not an option. We can't use Tempest. Sentries, the gas cost will make it just impossible, plus they're really fragile and don't do a lot of DPS. But we do have something that can handle it easily, the Archon. Now, you wouldn't think the Archon would be your first choice because, well, it doesn't do extra damage against Void Rays, which are not biological. However, they do not take any extra damage from Void Rays, and they just ruin them, frankly. You will notice that this probably would not have been able to defeat 2 Void Rays, but Archons have splash damage. Meaning that when you have an Archon and they have, let's just go... Oop, I put that on the wrong side. Let's go 2 Archons versus 3 Void Rays. You'll notice that there is a higher gas cost on our end, but in the end, this is... basically, we have the better end of the deal. We're going to attack in, and we're going to actually use this to focus. Oh, what on earth is that? What just happened? What the? Okay, am I just going crazy? Did anyone else see that? Did anyone else see that? Also, okay, I don't know what happened there, but we'll try this again. Actually, we're going to attack with the Void Rays so I can prove a point about how Void Rays attack. You will notice that they clump. Now that is very important because you see the splash damage. That splash damage is what you're aiming for. In this case, they will eventually take these out simply because I have no upgrades on these Archons, and they weren't as clumped as they normally are in battle. In battle, you will see a lot of Void Rays clumped really close together, but because if they stay in that clumped, splash damage of the Archons is what you'll use to take it out. In other words, when we're dealing with a player that's going Voids, and they won't just have Voids, remember they'll have their Zealots, they'll have other Sky Toss, they'll have a lot of things there, you want to use Archons. Archons will help you defeat Voids with their splash damage, but in the end, the only real way to defeat Voids is still with Voids. You're going to want Archon Void, and that's how you'll deal with it. You also can add some High Templars for Storm, also exploiting splash damage in that way as well. That is a little risky. If you win the ground battle, you'll be hitting your own units, the Zealots that go under them, and it's often nicer just to let those Zealots run by into your opponent's base. But in the end, that is how we deal with the IMBA BS that is the Void Ray. Remember, Void Rays do extra damage against armored units, so don't use anything that's armored against them. If you remember that much, you really should be fine. This is FDV Vladerag.